Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Alex Sotke. I'm with Filey, and I'm your host for the next session. Our next talk is about building HL7 FHIR capability on a regional level, presented by Philip. Unfortunately, due to some technical difficulties, Philip couldn't join us here today, so the next session has been pre-recorded. We will first play the video of the presentation, and afterwards you will have a chance to enter your questions into the Hoover Q&A section, and Philip will try to get back to you. And with that, I would say we get started. Marita, you can share the video now, if you like.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all of you, depending on where you are right now. I am here to give a presentation on how my organization, the Standards and Interoperability Lab Asia, is supporting countries all over the region in increasing their capability in using HL7 FHIR. Maybe just a disclaimer, what I will be doing right now is not to give a formal discussion, but rather it will be more of a storytelling with you guys. I would like to share with you our experiences in doing various FHIR workshops, and I would like to share to you the lessons that we have learned and what things have worked and what things that didn't work. Okay, so before I continue, I would like to first introduce myself. I'm Philip Zuniga. I am the director of the Standards and Interoperability Lab Asia. Our organization was established by the Asian Development Bank and the Asia eHealth Information Network to provide technical support to countries, particularly developing countries on their digital health implementation. We were established in 2017, and we have an active collaboration with over 13 countries in the Asia-Pacific region. So our lab provides training to countries to improve their capacity. We also do testing to ensure that the systems that they will be deploying are interoperable. We also develop tools that can help countries in their digital health implementation, and we also do teaming. So we work with them. We work with the Ministries of Health, with academia, with private sector to ensure that digital health solutions can be implemented properly. So for this presentation, I would like to achieve the following. Number one, I think the first learning objective is to develop a national plan or a plan on how to implement HL7 FHIR on a national level. Number two, it will also be good if we will be able to identify key topics that can be used when designing HL7 FHIR workshops. And number three, we will discuss the importance of designing localized learning materials that can be used during workshops. In terms of outline, we hope to cover the following things in this presentation. Number one, I want to answer the question, how are we building capacity regionally? So in this aspect, I will be sharing with you the experiences that we had in our lab. We will also discuss with you the FHIR Toolkit that we are currently working on. So the FHIR Toolkit basically is a repository of everything that a country or an organization would need if they intend to implement HL7 FHIR. Number three, we will also be sharing with you some development in the Southeast Asian region, particularly on FHIR adoption and awareness. And because basically we will show how how our capacity building program has been supporting this things. And number 4, we will discuss the challenges and opportunities that we are facing right now in working on improving the capacity of the region to adapt HL7 FHIR. As I told you earlier, most of the things that I will be sharing in this presentation are actually stories. Well, basically, these are the stories of our workshop, of how we conduct workshop, and I will also be sharing with you this initial story. So I will share with you this story on how we were able to ignite the fire in our laboratory. So during the early days of our establishment, we as a lab were focusing on looking at architecture, framework, governance, on digital health implementation. We were during those times we were so focused on OpenXIE, and most of the capacity building that we are doing are focused on OpenXIE. And that's good because we know that OpenXIE is a good architectural framework that can be used by countries in implementing their digital health solutions. And maybe during the early 2017, standard, particularly HL7 FHIR, was not yet that discussed in the region. However, we co-organized an interoperability event in Hanoi, Vietnam. I think this was late 2017. The keynote speaker during that event was Graham Grieve. And of course, every one of us knows Graham Grieve to be the founder of FHIR. And we listened to his talk, and we saw how the talk was impacting the whole digital health infrastructure in Vietnam. In a matter of months after that workshop, they were already releasing national policies on HL7 FHIR. So that was how fast the Vietnamese went into embracing FHIR as a national standard. On our side of the lab, we felt how big HL7 FHIR is and how impactful it can be to the region if the region will be able to adapt it properly. So I think for us, that was our moment of ignition. We saw an opportunity where we can support the region in a more impactful, in a more efficient way. So what we did was to further increase our capacity in HL7 FHIR. We brought in James Agnew in Manila. So our lab has been working closely with James Agnew and, well, even with Graham Grieve. So we brought him to Manila to do an HL7 FHIR workshop for us. It was a rainy week when James came into Manila, but we had FHIR, so we were discussing FHIR during that week. That was a very awesome week. We were learning a lot from James, and we felt that bringing him in was an investment for the region. We felt that we should be able to share to the region whatever we learned from James. So it was also an interesting time because I believe that workshop should be one of the first, if not the first, structured HL7 FHIR workshop to be scheduled in the Philippines. The FHIR standard during 2017 was relatively unknown in our country. So to bring in James Agnew and to conduct that FHIR workshop with us. By the way, there were only 4 attendees during that FHIR workshop. So basically, everyone in that picture, we were the first people who got in the Philippines who got a more structured, a more organized HL7 FHIR workshop. And then, I think a few months later, we had the ASIN, the Asia eHealth General Meeting in Colombo. So the ASIN General Meeting is usually attended by Ministries of Health, by Digital Health conveners, by clinicians, by IT people. So the 18 GM, so I think this was the 6th or the 5th 18 GM, is usually a convergence of people who have the same interest of implementing their own in-country digital health infrastructure. And it's usually an experience. Participants are sharing experience, are sharing learning, even failures with one another. So during that general meeting, we organized the community of interoperability lab. And call was focused on sharing experiences and learning across the various interoperability labs in the region. So we felt, from our lab, we felt that the COIL can be an anchor for us to work on developing regional capability on HL7 FHIR. So I think the EE general meeting was very significant for us because we were able to find people who we feel can support us as we embark on this ask of increasing awareness and adoption of HL7 FHIR in the region. At the same time, another part of the Asian general meeting that impacted to us was the open spaces. An open space is something new in workshops. Usually during open spaces, participants who organize themselves to discuss some topics that they want to discuss. Since we wanted to see the interest on HL7 FHIR in the region, we volunteered to have an HL7 FHIR table during the open spaces. And surprisingly, that table, the HL7 FHIR table, was the most popular table during the open space. A lot of people want to hear something about HL7 FHIR. And there were 2 sessions of the open spaces. On both sessions, the HL7 FHIR table was the most popular. So I think that was another impetus for us that there's a lot of people who want to learn more about FHIR, who want to have their own country adapt the FHIR standard. So basically, that was a moment, a light bulb moment for us. The Asia Pacific region needed a regional community with FHIR expertise. So I think that is the resolution that we really want to have. And the community with FHIR expertise will serve as the foundation so that we can further improve FHIR capacity in the region. So when we came home, we started internally. The first workshop that we organized was for an EMR provider in the Philippines called IHATID. So IHATID is a rural-based EMR that functions on a mobile tablet. They were interested in learning HL7 FHIR, so we looked at working with them to test our own HL7 FHIR curriculum. So since we wanted to improve HL7 FHIR capacity in the region, the first thing we needed to do was to develop a curriculum or a training guide. So basically, the EHATID workshop became our testing, the moment where we were able to test that curriculum. We felt that they would benefit greatly on FHIR as they were a tablet-based EMR, and they pushed data to a central server. So we had 3 attendees. We had more trainers than attendees, but that was good because we were able to focus on them. So we had 3 attendees during that workshop, and it was a good workshop. We spent half a day discussing the basics of FHIR. It was also a good eye-opener for us as we were able to see some areas where we can further improve our delivery of workshops. So what were the things that we saw during this first week workshop? First, we saw the importance of having a use case so that we can have a more focused discussion. Discussing HL7 FHIR, without a use case is basically discussing REST APIs. Just like how REST APIs are being discussed in classrooms. So we felt that it is important that we target a use case every time we do FHIR workshops. So the workshop with EHAT was easy to target because they are a homogeneous team and it was easy to select a use case that they can easily understand. Number two, I realized that it is very important that every time we do a FHIR workshop, especially for those people who will hear FHIR for the first time, it will be very good if we can demonstrate it quickly. So one of the things about FHIR is that we can demonstrate it easily to show how easy it is to get data from a FHIR server. Usually my favorite demo is I will just use my mobile phone, open the browser, and access a sample patient from a demo server. So it's a very simple demo, but the impact is big because they will realize that they don't actually need to install some tool just to access patient data. Another thing we learned was the importance of having a ready FHIR server. While there are many test servers available online, and actually we can set up our test server, internet connection may be intermittent, and hence a locally available server will be very handy. So after organizing that first workshop, we organized a second workshop. Basically, this was a larger workshop. We had, I think, around 20 people. And the background was homogeneous in a sense because most of that attendees are programmers. So this was a 2-day workshop. And the focus for us then was to introduce FHIR to the various startup EMR implementers in that country because we felt that if they will be able to understand how HL7 FHIR works and we will be able to do a proof of concept, it will be easier to convince the Ministry of Health. So as I mentioned earlier, it was an interesting workshop since most of the attendees already know what REST APIs are. So it was very easy for them to consume FHIR APIs. So actually the challenge that we had during the workshop was it was not very easy to model clinical scenarios. So while the attendees had an easier time grasping concepts on FHIR APIs, they were really having a challenge in modeling a clinical scenario that we provided. But maybe because these are not doctors or clinicians, but rather they are IT people. So the things that we saw from the workshop are, number one, first, when you talk with programmers, they really don't care much about how FHIR is structured clinically. IT people will look at these resources the same way they look at database schemas. Okay? And we should be prepared for that. Programmers prefer to code immediately and test their understanding by coding. Hence, I think it's important that formal lectures should be minimized, especially if most of the attendees are programmers. We also need to understand that the programmers are not doctors, so it will be very hard for them to model clinical workflows using HL7 FHIR. It is also important that we are prepared to deviate from our program, as FHIR is a very interesting topic, and it is possible that there is one area of interest that will be very interesting to that attendees, and hence they will be more focused into it. And number 5, we felt that there should be a ready-to-use repository of materials. So while there are a lot of tools and materials available online, it will be good if we can place them in one location so that anyone conducting a workshop can just pull out materials from that central repository. We were also able to do a capacity building workshop over here. So one of the workshops that we had was when we were invited by the e-health administration of Vietnam to provide a FHIR workshop to the people in Vietnam who are doing digital health. So we brought in James Agnew to lead the workshop. But what were the things that we realized? I think we realized that the usual workshop format might not be very useful in this setting. So we had the following learnings. Number one, it is important that the materials that we are using are localized. So when we are considering doing a centralized repository of materials, it is important that some of this would be localized so that it can be easily adapted by the attendees of a workshop. Aside from having it in local language, it is also important that local use cases are used to ensure that the use case being discussed is relevant to the attendees. It is important to know that it is very possible that your attendees might actually be better than you. In any case, more than just doing technology transfer, one goal of the workshop should be to introduce the attendees to the right people to ask and to the right place to ask questions with. As we have seen during that workshop in Vietnam, many of the attendees are already technically competent, and what we needed was to ensure that their questions are answered correctly. Lastly, we saw the difference from government on how they look at FHIR. More than the FHIR API or clinical modeling, government people are more interested in architecture that can utilize FHIR on how policies can be developed so that they can incorporate the FHIR standard. We had the first Philippine FHIR meeting last May 2019. So this was the time when we introduced HL7 FHIR to the Ministry of Health in the Philippines. So during this meeting, we were able to bring in, I think, around 50 stakeholders from government, various hospital owners to discuss how FHIR can be adopted in the Philippines. I think this was one of the first workshops where FHIR was considered to be a possible mainstream standard in the country. So what have we seen? Number one, I think it's important to maximize parallel sessions, especially in workshops where the attendees have different backgrounds. So while a plenary session is important to have a common ground, the parallel session will ensure that we are able to maximize the time that is being used by the attendees. In broad terms, we felt that clinicians are more interested in modeling, while IT people are more interested in REST APIs. Another thing that we have seen is the importance of identifying pain points, because when you have identified a pain point that FHIR can solve, it will be easier to get buy-in from the various stakeholders. Aside from the usual workshops, we also do internships. So in this picture, we had interns from the National Taipei University of Nursing and Health Sciences. I think they stayed in Manila for, 4-5 weeks. So basically, we gave them a workshop on FHIR, but since they were staying for 5 days, for 5 weeks, we wanted to make sure that they will know the relevant topics based on how they plan to do their actual final project, because we had a final project for this internship. So we saw that it's important that we learn by doing. So during our internship, we didn't do formal lectures, but rather we really had a lot of hands-on experience with our interns. So our interns, they didn't have FHIR experience before they came in during the internship. I think after that, they were able to set up a FHIR server. They were able to map their own local health data to FHIR. So I think they were really able to learn a lot on HL7 FHIR. And number two, we have to realize that there are many ways on learning FHIR. So a workshop is one, doing webinars is one, watching YouTube video is one, and learning by doing is another one. So we had quite a lot of experiences on doing FHIR workshops, and we were able to identify some items that are important in building the regional capacity on HL7 FHIR. Number one, there should be a clear goal. So every time we do a workshop, we have a goal for that workshop. If we are working with IT people, then we have a goal that is IT related. If we are talking with Ministry of Health, then we have a goal that is Ministry of Health related. Number two, we realize the importance of having a repository of learning materials. Number three, identifying pain points are important. So there should be a focus always when we do workshops. And the focus will be on how FHIR can be used to solve the pain points. Number four, we can maximize parallel sessions. Number five, we can be flexible with the schedule. So although we can define a schedule, again, as I mentioned earlier, FHIR is a very popular topic that there will be a point where people just want to ask questions that might not be directly relevant to what you're discussing, but is relevant to FHIR. Number six is be ready with a FHIR server. It's a must. And number seven, we have to acknowledge that attendees might be better than us, and we should be able to learn from them also, or we should be able to bring to them the resources that they will need to do whatever they need to do. So we have this FHIR starter toolkit. So as I was mentioned earlier, we wanted to have a repository of material, of HL7 FHIR materials. So the FHIR starter toolkit basically is a repository. So it answers the basic question, how do we start with FHIR? So if I am a government and I want to know how to start with FHIR, what we usually do is we share with you the FHIR starter toolkit so that you will have a more concrete idea on how you can start using HL7 FHIR in your country. So I will be showing to you that toolkit here. So we have here the FHIR starter toolkit. So we have a comparison of standards. We realize that many government entities have been using HL7 V2 or CDA. So we felt that it would be good if we can have a comparison of V2 with CDA with FHIR, so that the government people will see how FHIR is different with other standards. We have materials on capacity building, so we are constantly putting our learning materials to this site. We also have a discussion on how to run your own FHIR workshop. So if you are planning to do an in-country FHIR workshop, you may look at this site to see some of the lessons that we have learned in organizing FHIR workshops. We have also running your own connectathon. So we haven't done this yet because we're still observing how other groups, for example, HL7 FHIR, HL7-Asia organize an online connectathon. So we're observing how they are doing that, so that we will be able to share that to our the region. We have other materials. Usually we just look at the good materials online and then we place it in the starter toolkit. We have some tools. So we have here an HL7 FHIR server on Docker. So usually it discusses how we can set up a happy FHIR server using Docker. So our tool, our SIL-Asia happy FHIR server, we are also putting there the link. It will direct us to the FHIR server. Simplifier for, so basically these are the important tools on FHIR. We have also presented how FHIR can be adapted by different applications. FHIR profiling, ethical validation, as an example. So basically, it's a good starting point if you want to implement FHIR in your country or in your organization. So last January, we had, let me go back to my slide. So last January, before the pandemic, we had a regional FHIR workshop where we brought in 30, 40 people from all over Asia Pacific from 13 countries who basically have an overview of HL7 FHIR. So the first thing we did was we identified pain points, like what I told earlier. So we had a breakout session where the country representative would identify how they will use FHIR in their own digital health infrastructure. We acknowledge that the participants know better, so we gave a lot of time to the participants so that they can discuss whatever they want to discuss or they need to discuss. We had a lot of breakout sessions where participants would discuss with one another. Again, FHIR is something that you learn by using it. So by having breakout sessions, we are able to stimulate them to discuss how they can use FHIR. We had a lot of parallel sessions, so we separated clinicians from IT people. We had a whole track for IT people. We had parallel sessions on terminology services, on open email. Yeah, those things. We also had this parking lot of ideas where people might have some ideas that they want to discuss during the workshop, but we didn't want to disrupt our schedule that much because we have a very varied array of attendees. And we wanted to finish a certain set of material. So to do that, we should manage our time properly. So we had this parking lot where participants can put in ideas, and then we allotted some time towards the end of the workshop so that we can discuss those ideas. After that, we had the National FHIR Workshop. So I think the National FHIR Workshop was attended by over 120 people. So it's a very large workshop. And I think for an only FHIR event, I know that there are some events that are tied up with other events across the region. But for a standalone FHIR event having 120 people, I think that's already one of the largest in the Southeast Asian region. And we were able to bring in Ministry of Health, hospitals, startup to this workshop. So it's interesting to note that we started doing FHIR workshop with only 3 people. And last January, we were able to organize a workshop for 120 people. So what were our key learnings from that workshop? We saw how government was very interested in doing FHIR profiles. Because basically that's their entry point to doing policies. So once you have a profile, you can put the profile as part of the policy. It's also important to discuss architectures. Another thing that government likes. Number 3, there should be a single goal that will define the workshop. So for the National FHIR Workshop, although it's a whole day event, our singular goal was to convince the Ministry of Health to adopt FHIR. So that was the thing that we always look at during the duration of that one-day National FHIR Workshop. In this stage, I will be discussing some developments in the Southeast Asian region on the use of HL7 FHIR. So as we can see here in this map, as compared to America or Europe, FHIR is only starting in Southeast Asia, but Southeast Asia is really moving very fast. For example, in the Philippines, we were using HL7 FHIR as the main data exchange standard for sharing clinical information for COVID-19 surveillance. So, and this is interesting because there's a very limited material on how HL7 FHIR can be used for COVID-19 surveillance, for contact tracing. So, for many of those workflows, we have to we had to use FHIR and identify resources. And these were the first, from what we know, the way we modeled it should be one of the first instances when FHIR was used to model, for example, contact tracing. So we tried to quantify our improvement. So when we came in during the first week of January, we had an integration score of 3.4. Basically, an integration score is a way of measuring how integrated or how easy two systems can be integrated. So whether they already have data dictionaries, whether they can already use the APIs, whether they can already test it can already be tested. So on the average, on a scale of 1 to 10, during the early weeks of June, the score was 3.44. But the national government released a policy that FHIR should be used for integration and interoperability of health systems that are being used for COVID-19 response. So in a matter of 4 or 5 months, we were able to drive the integration score to 9.44. One of the reasons being seen is because we were using the FHIR standard, and it was actually very easy for the applications to adapt the FHIR standard. For the case of Vietnam, they have been using FHIR for the past 2-3 years, and FHIR has been the foundation of their digital health infrastructure. So maturity-wise, Vietnam is already very advanced compared to the other countries in our region because they really move fast. From Thailand, we know that a FHIR community has been established, I think that was last year or 2 years ago, and right now they are looking at how HL7 FHIR can be used to connect primary care hospitals. So there's interesting development in Thailand right now. In Indonesia, I think 2 weeks ago, I attended a webinar from a university, and we were discussing how HL7 FHIR can be adopted in Indonesia. So we're seeing that countries in Southeast Asia are already on their way of on adopting FHIR. So compared to 2-3 years ago when HL7 FHIR was not known in the region, I think we are already building that capacity, even if it's a slow process. So for countries that want to adopt FHIR, I think these are the things that we have seen that are being done in the region. Number one, government must set the policy. It's always government first. We have seen it in Vietnam, we have seen it in the Philippines. Once the government says that we use HL7 FHIR, it will accelerate adoption. Number two, health informatics school must include FHIR in their curriculum. So it is important that the health informatics graduates will be able to understand HL7 FHIR already. And we have seen this in the Philippines, in Thailand, and even in Indonesia. So the webinar that we had last week was basically organized by a university. Number three, there should be a common repository of learning material. So just like this other toolkit that we are developing. Right. Number four, not everyone needs to know. Not every developer must be FHIR expert. They just need to understand how to use FHIR, where they will come in, and then that's it. That's what we have seen in the Philippines, given that we implemented FHIR in a very short amount of time. We have to simplify FHIR to a point that it will be easily be digested by programmers. Number five, setting profiles and implementation guide is important. We know that already. Number six, FHIR is not hard to learn. That's true. Number seven, testing is very important. So if we are implementing FHIR nationally, testing should be included. So aside from the basic topics, we have seen that there's an interest in learning, profiling, and implementation guide development in FHIR. So that's very popular. FHIR extension is also popular. Testing and validation. Number 4, we realize that it is important that when we do capacity building, that ND should understand that FHIR was actually built over FHIR, the concept of structured definition. Number 5, terminology services with FHIR is also very popular. And number 6, FHIR modeling. So, given that we are on the way, we are currently supporting the region in increasing adoption and awareness on FHIR, we have seen some challenges and opportunities. Number 1, COVID-19 is both a challenge and an opportunity. It's a challenge because it prevents us from going to countries to have FHIR workshops. So during the start of the year, we were targeting to do 4 or 5 in-country FHIR workshops for this year. But because of COVID-19, we can't do that. However, it's also an opportunity because we were forced to do webinars. We were forced to do FHIR learning videos. And we did that. And we uploaded that on our YouTube channel. And surprisingly, the reach has been astonishing to the point that we are actually reaching more people via the webinars, via the YouTube channel, than the number of people we will have reached if we do face-to-face workshops. Number 3, we want to see how online connectathons can work and online testing, because that, given that we are on a pandemic, that will be very vital. Number 4, the FHIR Starter Toolkit provides an opportunity to further spread the use of FHIR. That is what we have been seeing right now. So hopefully, we have come to the end of this workshop. Hopefully, you have learned how to, number one, organize your own FHIR workshop. Number 2, we have listed down some topics that will be very interesting. And number 3, we have shared to you this Starter Toolkit, and this Starter Toolkit has a list of materials, tutorials, curriculum that you can use. So, how can you contact me? So, my email is in this slide. Our org already also has a Twitter account, and I am at the WOVA app. So, if you want to send me a message to further discuss, please do so. So, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Philip, for that great introduction on how to do community building. If you have any questions left, as just announced, please use the Hoover question and answer section, and Philip will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And with that, thank you so much for joining us, and